General Colin Powell is part of this experience on many fronts. He broke barriers in American government, from the armed forces to the executive branch. Powell was the first black Joint Chiefs chairman. He donated this Army uniform for the display. His military career began in the middle of the civil rights struggle. He retired from the Pentagon as a 4-star general.
General Powell then became the first black Secretary of State. He and his wife are not only donors to the museum, he also serves on the museum council. So we're very pleased to have General Colin Powell back to CBS This Morning. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie.
Great to have you here.
Ladies, great pleasure to be with you this morning.
Speak to the idea of what this means to you, what it means to African Americans, and what it means to Americans.
Let me start with America. It means a lot to America because this isn't just African American history, it's American history. And it's filling a gap that has existed in American history for so many years. This has been in concept for 100 years. And now it's here, and it's beautiful, it's magnificent, and it's different from any other thing on the mall. It's striking, and of course I've been associated with it for a number of years. And I think the American people are going to love coming to this place and completing this part of our wonderful history of this great country.
And to African Americans?
And to African Americans, of course. You know, I want to go in there and see Chuck Berry's Cadillac. I want to see my uniform.
Yes.
And other things like it. And I've been into the museum a few times and while it was under construction. And so it is going to be a treasure for African Americans, but it isn't just, we didn't design it just for African Americans.
But it's important to understand the struggle and how it connects to America today.
Understand the struggle. And I mean, I came into the Army just after segregation ended. And it was still a situation where I could go to Fort Benning, Georgia to get my infantry and paratroop and ranger training, but if I went outside of Fort Benning, Georgia into Columbus, Georgia, it was still segregated. I couldn't get a hamburger. And it was another few years before that ended. So we've come an extremely long way over the last half century of my public life. But there's a way to go yet. We shouldn't think it's over. We know it's not over. We see the problems. But this is a symbol of what can be achieved and how we have worked so hard for this long period of time to give African Americans the recognition they deserve, and also to show our fellow Americans of all races and denominations imaginable that this is part of American history, an essential part.
What do you make of the timing of it now, General Powell, when we are really having some racial issues again in 2016, that this museum is opening now at this particular time with Barack Obama in office?
Yeah, I think it's important at this time for this museum to open because it shows that we've come a long way, but the struggle's not over. And I tell all of the audiences I speak to, remember what the Founding Fathers said, we're always striving to become a more perfect union. They never said we are perfect. We are striving to become more perfect, and that is a striving that has to continue. And the problems that face us now are more than just the color of your skin. It's economic opportunity, educational opportunity, housing opportunity. And that's what we have to work on. And those are the issues that I think are still facing the country, and especially the African-American community.
General, you brought this has been a century-long struggle, and as you know, it started with black veterans of the Union Army proposing this idea of some sort of a museum. And in this museum, there is a whole section about blacks' contribution to the U.S. military, and that's where your uniform sits.
Yes.
And Lonnie had it set up, too, so that it overlooks the Washington Monument. You can see all the flags. What do we need to know about how African Americans have contributed to our military?
African Americans were always willing to serve the nation that was not yet willing to serve them. And even before the Revolutionary War, during the period of the militias, the various state militias, African Americans were there. They were there in the Revolutionary War, the General Washington. They were there in every conflict that America has had, because soldiers, black soldiers, knew that if they could demonstrate to white soldiers that I can fight as well as you, give me a blue uniform, put buttons on my uniform that say U.S., give me a rifle. They were determined to prove that if they could do that, they could do anything in this country. And there was a famous Confederate general who, when he heard the Confederacy was thinking of putting black soldiers on the line as soldiers, fighting soldiers, he wrote to the president, Jefferson Davis, don't do this. Use blacks for chopping wood or cleaning up or doing things like that. But if you tell them they can fight just like a white soldier, if they can carry a gun, if you trust them to do that, then our entire history of slavery is wrong. And it took another 100 years to prove it wrong.
From slavery to today, there's been accusations of racism in this campaign. There's also questions of the examination of the issue of community and law enforcement. How do you see this campaign so far? And does it cause you to consider, as your colleague and great friend Rich Armitage did, endorse Hillary Clinton?
Well, you know, I've always waited until I've seen more of a campaign before saying anything about the candidates. And I like to see the conventions. Those are over. Who is the vice presidential nominee? But I also want to see the debates, at least one debate where I can see them face to face. And so in due course, I will, you know, express my opinion about this, but I want to wait a little longer.
You will make an endorsement, but later.
I will express my opinion with respect to who I may vote for, who I will vote for.
In 2012, you endorsed Barack Obama. Are you leaning towards anyone this time?
Well, I always am leaning in one direction or another, but I'm not going to commit today.
But can I go back
to go to Charlie's point, I never use the term racism in describing anything because you immediately shut down conversation. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. What I have said over time is that there are elements in my party, the Republican Party, that show some level of intolerance that I don't think is worthwhile for the party to demonstrate. And so I hope that in the debates that we see ahead, these issues are joined.
Is that reflected in the nominee?
Everything is reflected in the party. I talk about the party, not the particular nominee. We'll see what happens in the debates. I'm anxious to see those.
I wanted to go back to the museum for just a second because I was struck when you talked about segregation. I can't imagine General Powell living in segregation. You talked about serving your country, but then you can't even get a hamburger. How does that affect you personally, and how do you overcome something like that? Does it leave a deep scar for you?
No, I don't like to carry scars around, but as I was telling the story, when I came back from Vietnam the first time, I'd been away for a year, a new wife, infant son that I hadn't seen, get back home. Back at Fort Benning, Georgia, which is integrated. The Army was the most politically ahead organization in the country at that time, and the other services as well. We were socially progressive. But as soon as I walked off Fort Benning and went to Columbus, Georgia, I couldn't go into a store, I couldn't get a hamburger, and that just told me, keep working harder. Keep demonstrating that my color does not affect my performance or my potential. And then the Civil Rights Act of '64 and the Voting Rights Act of '65 came along, and I felt like it was going to be.
Colin Powell, you know better, Colin Powell. You know better. All right?
Let me ask
As a black man in America, you drop bombs on our right.
Okay, we have a protest.
Is he one of yours?
He's definitely not one of ours, but he's coming up here to harass.
To that very point that I just wanted to make, that you said, in the military section, it's called the double V section of the museum because it's you fight for victory abroad, for victory at home.
Yeah.
So many soldiers were fighting for victory abroad and not here at home.
Yeah, well,
given the rights here at home.
really exploded after World War II, when we had tens of thousands of black soldiers coming home with their white buddies, and they had realized that, you know, we should no longer tolerate the conditions under which we are living. And so that double V thing set loose forces that allowed President Truman to sign the executive order, which desegregated the armed forces of the United States. But it took another 5 or 6 years after that before desegregation was reality throughout the armed forces of the United States.
So wonderful to have you here, General Powell. Thank you.
Very sorry for that interruption. I'm not quite sure what he's hollering, but he's clearly very,
well, you know,
very distressed.
That's the beauty of our country.
This is America. Yeah,
it's free to do that.
Just congratulations to you and everybody who enabled this museum to be.
Thank you.
It really is stunning.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Joe.